My brother's addiction shattered our family, leaving behind years of pain, fear, and broken trust. But through his recovery, we learned that healing is possible, and that love, when tested, can become stronger than ever. If you had told me years ago that my sibling would one day become a stranger, I would have laughed, not out of disrespect or disbelief, but because it would have sounded impossible. My brother and I were inseparable growing up. He was my partner in crime, my best friend, my protector, and sometimes my biggest rival. But more than anything, he was my mirror. We shared everything. We had different personalities. He was the bold one, the loud one, the charmer. I was the more cautious one, the planner, the quiet observer, but somehow that balance worked perfectly. Our childhood was filled with the kind of ordinary joy that doesn't make headlines but stays etched in your heart forever. Summer nights riding our bikes until the streetlights blinked on, movie marathons on the weekends with bowls of popcorn spilling onto the floor, and arguments over the remote that never lasted more than a few minutes. Our parents did their best to give us a stable life. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed, and we had each other. Looking back, I think that's what makes the pain so sharp, because I know who he used to be. I remember the version of him that used to help me with my math homework even though he hated numbers, the one who cheered the loudest at my school plays even when he claimed they were corny. He had a way of making everyone feel like they mattered, like they were seen. That's the brother I remember. That's the version of him that still lives somewhere in my mind, like an echo I can't shake. The first cracks didn't come in some dramatic, life-altering event. They came quietly, like a leak in the roof you don't notice until the water damage is already done. At first, it was little things. He started pulling away, missing family dinners, staying out late, showing up tired and irritable. He blamed it on stress, on work, on being in a weird place. We didn't ask too many questions. After all, everyone goes through rough patches. He was an adult now. We figured he just needed space. But that space kept growing. Conversations became shorter. His laugh, the one that used to fill a room, grew rare. There was a heaviness around him that none of us could name, but we all felt it. My parents noticed it too, though they handled it differently. My mom worried in silence, always setting a plate for him at dinner even when he didn't show up. My dad? He buried himself in work, pretending nothing was wrong. I floated somewhere in between, trying to justify his behavior to myself. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he was going through something he didn't know how to talk about. Maybe it was just a phase. The thing about addiction is that it doesn't announce itself with a banner or a warning. It creeps in under the radar, disguising itself as stress relief, experimentation, or even just a way to unwind. And by the time you realize it's taken hold, it's already woven itself into the fabric of someone you love. But back then, I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that my brother was changing, and I didn't know how to stop it. One particular memory stands out: his birthday. We had planned a surprise dinner, just like we always did. My mom cooked his favorite meal, and we all waited, checking our phones every few minutes. But he never showed. No call, no text, nothing. Hours passed. The food got cold. My mom kept glancing at the door, trying to mask the disappointment on her face. I remember feeling angry, not just at him, but at myself for still expecting the old version of him to walk through that door. That night, I think we all felt something shift. It was like realizing that the person you love is slowly slipping through your fingers and you have no idea how to pull them back. Still, I clung to the memories. I held on to the stories, the photos, the inside jokes that once meant everything. Because in some strange way, it gave me hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the brother I grew up with wasn't entirely gone, that somewhere beneath the silence, the lies, and the distance, he was still there, buried under the weight of whatever he was battling. I didn't know then just how deep that battle went. I didn't know how much pain he was in, or how far he would fall before we could even think about helping him climb back up. But in those early days, before addiction took its full grip, I held on to one truth like a lifeline. We were family, and family doesn't give up, no matter how dark things get. The thing about watching someone fall apart is that it never happens all at once. It's slow, gradual, almost imperceptible, until it's everywhere. That's how it was with my brother. One day, he was still cracking jokes at the dinner table. The next, he was canceling plans with vague excuses and disappearing for days at a time. But there was no exact moment I could point to and say, that's when it all changed. Instead, it was a quiet unraveling, thread by thread. At first, we chalked it up to stress. He had dropped out of college after just 1 year, saying it wasn't for him, and that he needed time to figure things out. We believed him. Not because it made sense, but because we wanted to believe him. He was always the golden child growing up, the one with the big dreams and the bigger personality. He said he had a plan. He said he was fine. He wasn't fine. He started hanging out with a different crowd, people none of us had ever met before, guys who didn't have jobs, didn't care about anything, and seemed to thrive in chaos. I remember asking him once if he was okay, really okay. He brushed me off with a smirk, said I worried too much, that he was just living a little. But there was a hollowness in his eyes, something I hadn't seen before. It haunted me. Soon the lies started, small ones at first. Telling my mom he was staying with friends when we later found out he was nowhere near them. Saying he was out job hunting when we knew he wasn't. Then came the money problems. Things started going missing around the house. Small things, things that could easily be overlooked. A missing $20, 0 cents here, a lost piece of jewelry there. We wanted to believe the best. Maybe we misplaced it. Maybe we just forgot, but deep down we knew something wasn't right. I'll never forget the first time I caught him high. I had stopped by his apartment to check in. The place was a mess. Clothes everywhere, half-eaten food on the counter, the smell of something I couldn't quite place lingering in the air. And there he was, slouched on the couch, eyes glassy, barely able to form a sentence. That wasn't my brother. That wasn't the boy who used to play video games with me until midnight or walk me home from school. That was someone else, someone I didn't recognize, someone drowning. I left that day feeling sick to my stomach. It's hard to describe the helplessness that comes with loving an addict. You want to save them. You want to grab them by the shoulders and shake the addiction out of them. You want to scream. Don't you see what you're doing to yourself, to us? But they don't see, not the way you do. All they see is the next high, the next escape, the next fix. My parents started fighting more around that time. My mom wanted to confront him. My dad wanted to give him space. I was caught in the middle, watching our once close family splinter under the weight of my brother's choices. My mom cried often, silently when she thought no one was looking. My dad retreated into silence, the kind that felt louder than any scream. We tried to talk to him, of course. We begged. We reasoned. We offered help, rehab, therapy, support groups, anything. But he always had an excuse. He wasn't that bad. He could stop whenever he wanted. He just needed time. He'd promised to change, and for a few days we'd see glimpses of the old him. He'd show up to family dinners, help with chores, laugh again. And just when we'd start to hope, just when we'd let our guard down, he'd vanish. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting. Every phone call made our hearts race. Was it him? Was he hurt? In jail? Dead? Every knock at the door sent a wave of panic through our house. We lived in a constant state of fear, of dread, of waiting for the worst news. And yet, even then, I still believed I could fix it, that if I just said the right words, if I just found the right moment, I could reach the version of him I knew was still in there. But addiction doesn't work like that. It doesn't care about your love or your loyalty. It doesn't listen to reason or emotion. It takes and takes and takes until there's nothing left to give. I started to resent him, and then I hated myself for feeling that way. How could I hate someone I loved so deeply? How could I be so angry at someone who was clearly in pain? The guilt ate at me. But I was tired. We all were. And no matter how much we wanted to save him, it was becoming clear that he didn't want to save himself. We were watching him fall apart in slow motion, powerless to stop it. And somewhere along the way, I realized that the brother I grew up with, the one who used to light up every room, was fading into someone I didn't know. Someone whose shadow was stretching over all of us, dimming the light in our family day by day. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. The moment when the cracks finally gave way and everything crumbled. It didn't happen in a single day, but there was a day when we all knew, without question, that we couldn't pretend anymore. That day still haunts me. It started like any other Sunday. My mom was making breakfast, still trying to hold on to the routine she believed could hold our family together. Dad sat at the table, scrolling through the news on his phone, not really reading anything. I remember sitting across from him, watching the clock and wondering, again, if my brother would show. He hadn't in weeks, but we always left the door open for him, always set out a plate. Hope is strange like that. It clings even when every part of you wants to let go. He did show up that morning, but not in the way we'd hoped. He stumbled through the front door sometime afternoon, shirt stained, eyes wild and unfocused. At first I thought he was drunk, but there was something different this time, something darker. He wasn't just high, he was completely gone. His speech was slurred, movements jerky, and his paranoia was through the roof. He accused us of spying on him, said the neighbors were watching, said he couldn't trust any of us. My mom stood frozen in the kitchen, her hands still covered in flour from baking. My dad stood up and tried to calm him down, but that only made it worse. I'll never forget the moment my brother shoved our father. It wasn't a hard shove, not violent, not dramatic, but it didn't need to be. It was symbolic. It was the line he crossed, the moment we realized he wasn't just hurting himself anymore. He was hurting us, too. My father didn't say a word. He just backed away slowly and sat down, the pain in his eyes saying more than words ever could. What followed was chaos. My brother started yelling, knocking things over, pacing the room like a caged animal. I called the police. Not out of spite, but out of fear. We didn't know what he was capable of anymore. When they arrived, he panicked, tried to run, tried to fight. I'll never forget the image of him handcuffed on the front lawn, screaming, crying, begging us not to let them take him. That night broke something in all of us. My mom cried for hours, rocking back and forth on the couch like a mother who had lost her child. Because in a way, she had. My dad didn't speak at all. He just sat in his chair, staring at the wall like he was trying to erase what had just happened. And me? I felt everything and nothing at once. Grief, anger, guilt, exhaustion. It was all there, swirling inside me like a storm I couldn't escape. That was when we finally admitted it out loud. My brother was an addict. No more excuses, no more rationalizing, no more pretending. He was sick. He needed help, and we couldn't keep sacrificing ourselves trying to save someone who wasn't ready to be saved. In the days that followed, everything changed. We locked up our valuables, we changed the locks. My mom started attending a support group for families of addicts. My dad, always the strong and silent type, began seeing a counselor, though he would never admit it out loud. I started keeping my distance, not because I didn't care, but because I had to. I was drowning too, and I knew if I didn't pull back, I wouldn't have anything left to give. It's hard to explain the guilt that comes with setting boundaries with someone you love. It feels like betrayal, like abandonment. But the truth is, loving an addict requires a kind of strength no one teaches you. You have to love them enough to say no, to stop enabling, to let them fall. Because sometimes that's the only way they learn how to rise. For months, we barely spoke to my brother. He called a few times, usually when he was desperate, high, or looking for money. We had to say no. Every time we did, it tore a little piece of us away. But deep down, we hoped it would push him toward real help, real change. I'll never forget the night he called my mom, sobbing. It was the middle of the night. He said he couldn't do it anymore. Said he was scared. Said he was ready. That call was the beginning of something new, not healing yet, but the first faint whisper of it. We didn't know then if he meant it. We didn't know if it would stick, but we knew we had to try again. Because even after everything, even after the lies, the violence, the heartbreak, he was still my brother. And I still remembered the boy who used to dance in the living room in his pajamas, who once made me laugh so hard I cried, who swore he'd always protect me. That boy was buried deep under layers of pain and poison, but I still believed, maybe foolishly, that we could find him again, even if it took everything we had left. When my brother finally said the words, I need help? I didn't believe him at first. After everything we'd been through, it felt too easy, too sudden. Like one honest conversation could erase years of chaos. I'd heard him say, "I'm fine," and "I've got this," too many times. I wanted to believe this was different, but I'd built walls around my hope. I didn't dare let it back in without proof. But something about him was different that night. He wasn't making excuses or blaming anyone else. He was quiet, defeated. His voice trembled as he spoke, and I could see it in his eyes. He was scared, really scared. And somehow, that fear gave me a tiny sliver of hope, because fear, real fear, meant he was facing it. The addiction, the damage, the reality. The next day, my mom and I made calls to treatment centers, support hotlines, and recovery clinics. We researched options, asked questions, and filled out forms. It was overwhelming, but this time we weren't dragging him through it. He was asking us to help. He was showing up. And for the first time in years, I started to believe maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new. He checked into a 30-day inpatient program 2 days later. Dropping him off at the rehab center felt like dropping off a stranger. He was pale, thin, hollow-eyed. His body looked like a shell of who he once was. But underneath it all, I saw a flicker of the brother I grew up with. The way he hugged my mom and held on a little longer. The way he looked me in the eye and said, "I'm sorry." I didn't know if he meant it then. I didn't know if he could follow through, but I nodded anyway. Because that's what family does. We show up, even when it hurts. Those 30 days were the longest of our lives. There were no daily updates, no late-night texts, just silence. We had to let go, and that was harder than I ever imagined. My mom cried every night, clutching the phone like it might ring any second. My dad still didn't say much, but I saw how he stood outside my brother's room sometimes, just staring in at the empty bed. And me? I busied myself with work and school, but the worry never left my chest. I kept replaying every memory, every moment I'd overlooked, every opportunity I missed to say, "I'm here." When we finally got the call that he was ready for visitors, my heart raced the entire drive to the facility. I didn't know what to expect. Would he look better? Would he even want to see us? But when he walked into that visitor's room, something had shifted. His eyes were clearer. He'd gained a little weight. His posture was stronger. Most importantly, he smiled, not a fake, twitchy grin, but a real one, like he hadn't smiled like that in years and finally remembered how. The visit was awkward at first. We didn't know how to talk about everything without breaking, but he led the way. He talked about his group sessions, the people he'd met, the things he'd learned about himself. He talked about accountability and shame and how he'd numbed everything to avoid feeling anything at all. He talked about us, how he hated what he'd done, but he knew saying sorry wasn't enough, that he wanted to earn our trust again, not demand it, earn it. That's when I knew he was really trying. But recovery wasn't a straight line. After the 30-day program, he moved into a sober living house and started outpatient therapy. The structure helped, but so did the community. For the first time, he was surrounded by people who understood. People who didn't judge him, because they had their own demons too. It gave him a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. Back at home, we were healing too, but healing doesn't mean forgetting. There were still days when my mom would flinch if she heard a crash, expecting another outburst. My dad still locked the garage, a habit that hadn't quite faded. And me? I still kept my phone volume up at night, afraid I might miss a call that something had gone wrong. But slowly, we learned to rebuild. We set boundaries. We had difficult conversations. We even laughed again, nervously at first, then freely. My brother started volunteering at the center that helped him. He said helping others reminded him to stay grounded, to stay clean. He apologized over and over, but this time not just with words, with actions. He showed up, every day, for himself, for us. It wasn't perfect. He had slip-ups, relapses, moments where the darkness tried to pull him back in, but he didn't hide it. He called us, told his sponsor, faced it. And that honesty, that fight, was something I'd never seen in him before. He was becoming someone new, not the old brother I remembered, but someone stronger, someone more aware, someone choosing life one day at a time. And I was beginning to forgive not just him, but myself too, for not being able to save him, for the anger I'd carried, for the guilt that still lingered in the quiet moments, because I realized recovery isn't just for the addict. It's for everyone who loves them too. We were all in recovery now, together. Recovery didn't end when my brother stopped using. In many ways, that was just the beginning. The real work, the hardest work, came after. It was in the quiet spaces, the in-between moments, where we had to face the damage, the silence, and all the feelings we'd buried to survive. And the hardest part of all, rebuilding trust. Trust, I learned, doesn't come back with an apology. It's not restored with a hug or even a full month of sobriety. It's not something you give just because you want to believe again. It's earned, brick by brick, moment by moment. And sometimes it has to be earned more than once. At first, everything felt fragile. Even though my brother was showing up, going to meetings, working a job, staying clean, there was a part of me always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I still hesitated to leave my wallet out on the counter. I still checked on him in subtle ways, monitoring his energy, his tone, the look in his eyes. I hated that I did it, but I didn't know how not to. That instinct to protect myself never really goes away once you've been burned so deeply. He knew it too. He could feel the caution in the room when he walked in. He could see the way my dad still hesitated before handing him the keys to the car. He once told me, quietly, that he understood why we couldn't trust him yet. He didn't expect us to, but he hoped we'd let him keep trying. So, we did, slowly, cautiously, together. We started to spend time as a family again. Not every night, not all at once, but there were dinners, Sunday walks, moments that almost felt like the past before everything broke. My brother was different now, more reflective, quieter, but somehow more present. He used to be all jokes and charm to hide the darkness inside him. Now, he was open about the hard days. He told us when he was struggling, when he felt weak. That honesty took courage, more courage than I'd ever seen in him before. He made amends too, one by one. I watched him sit across from my dad and say, without flinching, that he regretted what he'd done, that he knew how much he'd hurt him. I saw my father, a man who rarely shows emotion, place a hand on his shoulder and say in a choked voice, "I'm proud of you." I hadn't heard him say that in years. We all needed that moment. With me, it took longer. We had always been close, the kind of siblings who could finish each other's sentences. So when his addiction drove a wedge between us, it felt personal, like I'd lost not just a brother, but a best friend. I carried that grief like armor, and while he was rebuilding himself, I had to learn to lower that armor little by little. I remember the night we really talked, just the two of us. We were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, and he turned to me and said, "I know I let you down. I hate that I made you feel like you couldn't count on me. I want to be your brother again, not just in name, but in how I show up." I didn't respond right away. My throat tightened, and all I could do was nod, because part of me had wanted to hear that for years. And the other part, it was finally ready to let it in. We still had hard days. There were times when a missed call would send my mom into a panic, or when my brother would cancel plans last minute and we'd all spiral with old fears. But every time he showed up again, every time he chose honesty over hiding, we healed a little more. Recovery, we realized, wasn't about perfection. It was about commitment, consistency, resilience. Eventually, the little things started to feel normal again. Laughing together over dinner, arguing about TV shows, playing board games at the kitchen table. They were simple things, but they meant everything. They were signs of life, real life. Returning to our family. My brother reached his 1-year sober anniversary, surrounded by all of us. He gave a speech at his support group that day, and we were there in the back, holding each other's hands, crying as he spoke about the darkness he survived and the people who stood by him when he was barely himself. He thanked us, but he also said something that stuck with me ever since. I used to think addiction was the end of me, but now I see it was the beginning of a version of myself I never thought I could be. We clapped, we cried, and in that moment I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. No, our family wasn't the same as before, but maybe that was okay. Maybe we weren't supposed to go back to how things were. Maybe we were meant to move forward with deeper understanding, harder-earned love, and a strength we never knew we had. This journey taught me that healing doesn't look like forgetting. It looks like remembering without reliving. It looks like loving with boundaries, forgiving without erasing. And most of all, it looks like hope, quiet, patient, and unwavering. My brother's recovery didn't just give him a second chance. It gave all of us one. And though the road was long and broken, we walked it together. And in that journey, we found our way back to each other.